Okay, we will call the Volusia County May 10th, 2023 special meeting, a goal setting meeting to order at 3:03 p.m. And if you would stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll begin.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Carissa, Jenna, would you call the roll?
Mr. Reinhardt,
Here.
Mr. Robbins, Mr. Santiago,
Here.
Mr. Dempsey,
Here.
Mr. Johansson,
Here.
Mr. Kent,
Here.
Mr. Brower.
Here. And we will start off, as we always do in a public meeting, with public comment. We have two people that would like to speak. First is Alec Redner of Daytona Beach Shores. You will have 3 minutes to speak to us.
It seems nowadays, under the Trotskyite communist policies of diversity, equity, inclusion, white Northern European men of America are the target of police and federal agents. Communist prosecutors that are funded by George Soros give more liberal sentencing to blacks and Hispanics, but give heavier sentencing to white men in the name of equity. Blacks and Hispanics in America are also given more lenient bonds than white men, no matter if the white man was wrongfully arrested or wrongfully convicted by dirty cops or dirty feds. Looking at the criminal justice statistics under Obama's civilian national security force, it looks like white men currently in the United States are the most wrongfully arrested, wrongfully convicted race by far under this commie equity garbage. I believe Congress should abolish threat laws, abolish hate crime laws, abolish affirmative action, abolish the Civil Rights Act, because it's all thought control, communist mind control. Florida health officials at several monoclonal antibody clinics denied me several times because I was white under the government's equity policies. The Department of Health and Human Services, under illegal and unconstitutional equity policies, openly genocided white European Americans in U.S. hospitals by denying them medical treatment, killing them because they're white in the name of equity. And this actually did happen. This happened in many states where white people were denied health services. It's not a falsehood. The Department of Health and Human Services and Homeland Security spent hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID-19 CARES Act money illegally on illegal aliens at hospitals, while white Americans were targeted with COVID vaccines and remdesivir in the name of equity. See, illegal aliens crossing the southern border didn't have a COVID test or a COVID vax, but white Canadians, when they crossed the northern border, they'd have to have a COVID vax pass under Mayorkas, the communist traitor. The last 3 years between Obama's Weatherman Underground-led Black Lives Matter riots burning down American cities and the COVID-19 vaccine holocaust and remdesivir holocaust, this all adds up to what you call white genocide, white holocaust under the evil Trotskyite communists running the U.S. government. I believe Congress should default on the U.S. debt so the Pentagon does not implement the United Nations, World Health Organization, international health regulations that will end this republic as we know it. I also still have a recall for Ron DeSantis because he still secretly supports the UN, World Health Organization, and all that equity garbage, white genocide garbage. I also believe he's still protecting the murderers, the board of directors at the hospitals, killing people. Well, COVID will soon be over, but the Holocaust is still there. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne Schreiber.
Hello, good afternoon. Suzanne Schreiber from Ormond Beach. The legislative session wrapped up on Friday, May 5th. The following items were in the $117 billion budget transmitted to Governor DeSantis for his review. This is pertaining to land conservation. $850 million for land acquisitions within the Florida Wildlife Corridor, Osceola to Ocala. $200 million for expanded statewide bike walking trails network and connections to the Wildlife Corridor. $100 million for conservation easements under the Rural and Family Lands Protection Program. $100 million for Florida Forever. $11.2 million for the Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program. $60 million for park projects. At the April 6th Volusia Forever Committee meeting, I asked when the Wildlife Corridor was created in Volusia County. The answer was 2003. We have undergone many changes since then. I asked staff to investigate expanding the Wildlife Corridor in Volusia. This would require land meeting criteria set forth by Florida Forever. If land qualifies, it is likely to be deemed priority 4 or 5, but one does not know unless they pursue it. An advantage would be the opportunity to increase matching funds. We are in a different scenario than most counties where the conservation program was in place for 20 years prior. I will remind everyone this is a willing sellers program. It is essential to continue locating funding mechanisms. After 20 years of Volusia Forever being implemented, residents took it upon themselves to renew the program. I am confident that the effort to investigate expanding the Wildlife Corridor will be wildly popular with residents of our county. I asked the same question that I asked pertaining to the Ormond Scenic Loop. At what point do we stop questioning whether residents support conservation and preserving pristine areas? It is a given. We owe it to ourselves to look into opportunities when funds of this magnitude are supported by state legislation. But quite frankly, we just owe it to ourselves to pursue every avenue in support of what residents already showed they wanted. This is brought to you with a vision and foresight for our quality of life. On April 11th, representing Dream Green Volusia, I was in Tallahassee attending Florida Wildlife Corridor Day, advocating for land conservation in our home county. Today, I ask that a motion be made, seconded, and voted to instruct staff to pursue expanding the Wildlife Corridor in Volusia County. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And that brings us to item 1, discussion on council goals. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Marlowe. And I think before, wanted to give the county manager a chance to say something. You're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Just thank you for everyone being here, taking an extra day. And I think that Mr. Marlowe go over the format, and we're anxious to get started and look forward to it. Thank you.
Okay. See how easy we are?
All right. Mr. Chairman, Council, pleased to be with you. I admit I'm kind of anxious because we got a little less than 4 hours, and I have 7 non-opinionated, very shy individuals in front of me. So this is going to be a challenge, you know. But what you have, the document there is you see 6 goals. Those came out of my conversations with you, and today I want to go through those goals, and today's discussion about goals. If you turn to the page, you'll see under each goal there are a number of objectives. We're not going to discuss those today. Those are sample objectives. They're to simply provide some content, but everything you talk to me about is in one of those goals. So as we go through, if you'll look through, you'll find it. I do want to say for the record, and so anyone getting this document, the council today is not being asked to endorse, accept, or reject any of these objectives. No one should come out here and say the council has set this as an objective. That's not today. The most you can say is a member of council felt this was an objective worth having some conversation about. Did not draw any more than that. Okay, that was a little better. All right, thank you. So that's what we want to do. I'm going to ask for our first 5 to be a fairly structured format so that we can get through it. I'm going to ask each of you, I'll go to you. I'm going to start the first round with Commissioner Johansson. I'll just go right through. I'd like you to we'll talk on goal 1. I'll explain it briefly. I'd like you, in your 3 minutes, your clock will be running, and if you see me waving at you, you're starting to get over, and I'd appreciate you wrapping up. Because one of the things y'all talked to me about time management, and this is our test of time management today, to see if we can get through all this within the time we have. And then the next one, I'm going to start with Councilman Dempsey and go back this way, and then we'll just keep moving that way so you can see it in sequence. Okay, so if you'll turn to page 1, I guess it's not paginated, create a more efficient and streamlined regulatory framework. Y'all talk to me about your concerns about whether you had duplicate replication, you were regulating areas you didn't need to regulate, whether the permitting other processes were slower or is not as consistent as you wanted. So the whole thing you're talking about is how do you create a regulatory framework that's going to be more effective, get more what you want to as a county, et cetera. So that's what I'd first like to talk about. And Councilman Johansson, if I can come start with you, your thoughts on whether this is a worthy goal and what do you expect? What's the outcome you want? Difference, more, less, whatever. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I like goal 1, and the reason why is, and I've said it a few times up here since I've been elected, is I'm a less government kind of guy, and I'm also a process-oriented, lean Six Sigma kind of guy, and what frustrates me the most is when people don't have a process to follow that's easy to follow for government bureaucracy. That's at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local level. We put people through the ringer before they can get a permit, before they can get, in some cases, in some places, a driver's license. Maybe you're not here in Florida, but we have to make it as easy as possible for people to get what they need while conforming to the government regulations that stipulate whatever it is we're giving: money, tickets, permits, licenses. So I want there to be a clear process, a process that 90% of the standard people can understand, that you don't need to hire a lawyer to get there to get whatever it is, and that it makes sense. I'm a firm believer that the county manager and his staff are intelligent. We pay them, in most cases, a lot of money to do their job, and I want to empower them to make decisions instead of looking at a bunch of regulations and go, no, you can't do that because B says you can't. But it doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't make sense. Call Commissioner Robbins if you don't like it, because he's the one that made the law. Just get rid of some of it. Sorry there, Danny. And allow them to use just a little bit of their brain to make the right decision. Are we going to be right every time? No, we might get it wrong, but by writing it in a regulation, we might get it wrong just as often. So err on the order of letting people execute what we've asked them to execute.
Thank you very much. Chair Robbins, your thoughts on Goal 1 regulation?
I'm not going to go through it all. Commissioner Johansson pretty much said it all. You know, efficiency and consistency with me, and that goes into just running a smooth, effective operation and making it as simplistic as possible for our folks first, and then for our staff, and at the end for us to get through it with the least amount of walls and hang-ups as possible. But that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you. Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, sir. Obviously, the create more efficient the framework. If you don't have the framework, if you don't have that basis, you can't accomplish the rest of it. And I think Councilman Robbins said it, or Councilman Johansson said it just a minute ago, to the empowerment of your staff and to have that consistency and let them be more effective in doing so. We put them in those positions. We expect it. I don't like micromanaging things. I also am a person that is very structured. You know, list A, B, C, D. I like that. I come from 30 years in law enforcement. You got used to that. So how you address certain things should be in that framework. It goes right back to framework and being the most effective. If you have that, everything else will take care of itself. So I do like that. So I think that is most important as a first goal before we can even address anything that we want to do. You know, the getting into the weeds more, which is not what we're here for today. Before you can accomplish that, you have to have that framework. So I think we're all in agreement here on that. So.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sure?
Yes, I won't disagree with that either. I think this is one of the most important goals that we get to deal with today. I'm looking at it more from the perspective of homeowners, property owners, constituents. I from time to time go to PLDRC meetings just to see what our neighbors go through to ask for permission to put a shed in their backyard, to add on to their house or repair a roof. And I think any opportunity that we can take as a council to work with staff to eliminate requirements that aren't state required, that we should do, to eliminate certain permits. I mean, our permit office is buried all the time. And I would like to not penalize homeowners, penalize is how they see it, for working on their own homes. So to me, this is really important. Development regulations, you'll probably hear me say this throughout I could probably fit it into each goal this morning, but I really am wanting us to work with the NRAC committee to make sure that the low impact development parameters get passed this year with our development community, so that they're part of it, and they have to be part of it. I think they're willing to be part of it. They just want to know what's happening, so that we can better control our water use, water quality. Not to create new requirements that we throw at them, but we have to do it together. We have to sit down together and do it. A lot of the things that some of the other council members, I assume, said that are printed here, to revise regulatory requirements that impact affordable housing. Absolutely, I think we are doing that. Staff has already started. We're already talking about changing zoning, so that zoning is a big deal. If you want to have a duplex or a triplex where there's a single family home, we can do that I believe, without destroying neighborhoods, and to provide more equitable housing. Two things I'll just mention real quick. Number F and H. F is really important to me. Develop a one-stop shop for permitting with greater coordination with the cities. I had lunch today with a group of people that we were talking about ways that we could work with the cities and the county together to be more of a united front. And I think one of the things that we really need is to bring in more business to Volusia County. I think that's important. And I'll save the last one for later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to say, let me say, the objectives here you gave me, some of them are already in process.
Yes.
They're being worked on. Some y'all have already made decisions on. But if you said it, I wanted to put it on paper. So, Councilman Santiago, your thoughts about this goal?
Thank you. Thank you for being here today to help us with this. I think a lot of what's been said, I certainly agree with. And it sounds like the theme is the same, and you started with all of us to get to that point, to start there. But I'd like to, we talk about eliminating processes or reducing the cumbersome part of processes, the red tape, which I'm all for. But at the same time, I think we need to look at how do we measure that, right? Because, how do we get there? And what direction do we give to get there so that we could quantify the vision is being executed on, and we can talk to our constituents, hey, we've done this. So I wanted to throw out the suggestion that as we do this, I think the people that know best of what is waste, of what is unnecessary, are the people that do this job every day, regardless of department. I would propose, as we go through this process, to give the direction to each of our departments and say, go back and look at everything that you do that interacts with the public, and come back with a list of things through our county manager, come back with a list of things, whether it's ordinance-oriented, guided,
or just process that was created internally and saying we can get rid of these things to make life easier for constituents to interact with us. That would be helpful for me as an individual member to say, well, this is what we did, right? We did reduce the size of government or the process. So I pretty much agree with everything my colleagues have said here. But I want to, as we go through this, if we can give that direction, it'd be helpful for me to have data that shows what we've actually accomplished.
Absolutely, and after y'all are finished, I'm going to ask the manager to talk about how he's going to approach it, and what you'll hear is a lot of what you just said. You know, you need to get all the people who know it, lay out the stuff, and part of a work plan which you'll be developing is how you measure, how you show progress or lack thereof, you know, so. Councilman Kent?
Good afternoon. For goal one, I can definitely get behind a more streamlined process. I've talked about it since day one, being more efficient and effective. I'm not going to repeat what's been said. In fact, I'll talk for maybe 15, 20 seconds total here. So for this first goal is something that I can get behind. And I think whenever you look at your process and you try to streamline it, it's a healthy exercise for not only the government as a whole, but the department heads. It tends to make you want to trim the fat and work leaner, and those are positive things.
Thank you very much. Councilman Dempsey?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, I'm on board with everybody else here. The one thing that I know we had in college to deal with the bureaucracy of college and all the red tape that went with it is we had an ombudsman office, and they were quite helpful. And if we don't have one, it'd be nice to have one. An ombudsman is basically a government-appointed agency that actually, if you're a frustrated taxpayer, student in that case, or a citizen here trying to get a permit done, you can actually go to the ombudsman and they'll assist you in, you know, going through the right process. I think a lot of people get frustrated because they don't know what to do next, or they have to hire an attorney or an engineer and spend thousands and thousands of dollars. I know here at the courthouse, they have a paralegal on staff all the time, and they do nothing but help people when they represent themselves with forms and stuff like that. So it'd be nice to at least consider having some type of office here within the county to where frustrated taxpayers trying to do something through the government can get assistance. And that actually might be a resource to field complaints against the people from the county who they've been dealing with and maybe do not feel like they're being treated fairly or with, you know, the proper respect towards the taxpayer. Also, if possible, maybe giving some sort of incentive plans to the employees that let them have reviews, and whoever ends up the month with the highest in customer satisfaction. I know a lot of car dealerships and stuff do that. If they get a high customer satisfaction review, then they get bonuses and stuff like that. If we offered something like that with the front desk people, you know, the frontline people who are dealing with the public, and, you know, those are the ones who I think are probably the most important in, you know, helping people get things done. Just give them a little bit of incentive to be extra nice and extra helpful, you know, to the taxpayers.
Thank you.
And that's about it.
You know, y'all have just set your first policy goal here in the sense of you want to really change the regulatory framework and approach in this county. I'm going to ask the manager now to sort of talk about how he's going to approach that task, because you're setting policy. His job is to figure out how to do that policy. So, Mr. Manager?
Yes. Well, I think you guys touched on exactly what we would do, not only on this goal, but there'll be some other goals up ahead. Certainly, we would involve the division and department heads and the people doing the work. I think that's a basic almost tenet of doing efficiency work, is you got to get with the people who are doing the work. We have examples of that too, that I think on some of the other goals coming up, I'll mention and where we've done some of that work. And one thing I'd like to, the council would entertain was bring in an example of where we have done that on a wide scale through a department, and kind of the idea, the process that's used, and maybe we'd move that process into some of the other areas where we haven't done that yet. And so I would be bringing that forward. And again, some of these regulations on this side, I think I'd like to approach it also with what we're preempted. In other words, what can we not do and what can we do, and try to get that divided out so that we're not spending time only to find out, well, that's not something we could touch. So we'll do that as well as part of that exercise, and then concentrate on the things that we have the power to change.
Thank y'all very much. We're going to go on to goal 2 here. So if you'll turn to that page. The first one, regulation, is really a subset of this second goal, but you stressed it so much, I wanted to have it there. But this is really about streamlining government as a whole, and it goes beyond just your regulatory functions. But you've alluded to some of that, but what you're trying to do is how can the processes here work simpler, better, quicker, more efficient, more effective? How can you measure yourself? It's how do you make this government, really work better? Same time, you've got some staffing issues. You talk about addressing it here. Most of your work is done through people. You have to have people to do it. It also talks about how do you measure your stuff and how do you hold yourself accountable for performance. So there's a whole lot in this particular goal. And it also talks about a number of other commitments that you have externally, and how you want to rethink some of that. And one of the things that happens is anytime a new council comes on, they inherit work of a prior elected body. And you may agree with that or you may not agree with that, but it's important to relook at it and say we want to keep on the same direction or we want to take a different direction than what was prior approved. And that's important for staff to know, because until you give that direction, they're going to continue moving on with what's been approved. So, Councilman Dempsey, I'd like to start with you this time if I could, and we'll just come back across the board. So.
Well, this thing, I think this kind of goes along with what we just talked about. I mean, I just want to have a more efficient framework, and I don't really know how to do that, but I think what George said was probably fitting. So I just really have nothing to add to that.
Okay. That's perfectly fine. Councilman Kent.
Yes, and Mr. Dempsey is spot on. It's very similar to the first one, and looking at this, especially with the sample objectives, I thought A, B especially jumped out at me. When looking at this, I think it's important to note, I don't know about the other council members, but I know on my emails, since I've been elected here, I've had, I think, 4 emails from people who are really upset with staff because the permitting process is broken in their eyes. And I'm pleased to report this afternoon that in 100% of those cases, all 4 of those individuals that were letting me know how broken our system was, because it's hard to dispute facts. And when the facts were presented, rather expeditiously, by the way, by our permitting process, that it indeed was not at all staff's fault. It was 100% of the time the contractor's fault and or the subcontractor's fault. And they didn't share that information with the homeowner or the property owner. And I think that's important to note, especially looking at this when we're talking about, being running efficiently and effectively, because it opened my eyes to where we are batting 1,000 with me. I've had 4 instances come up, and all 4 have come to the exact same conclusion, and I think that's important to share. So, yep, efficient and effective. I'm good with this one as well.
Okay, Councilman Santiago.
Thank you. I read the title, Increase the Efficiency and Effectiveness of Government Operations. I think something that I've talked about in this council is particularly when it comes to our legislative engagement. I think the message has gone to our current lobbyist. John Booker has certainly responded to some of the comments and inquiries that I've made, and I think he's shared it with the council also. Everything he's shared with me, I think it's been copied with everybody. But when I went up to Tallahassee about a month ago now, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, talking to our lobbyist, and particularly, I brought up the comment that I know we are set up with 2 different, I think, contracts. I'll just use that term. One for appropriations and one for legislative. And our lobbyist is a good one. He's one of the most respected ones up there, so I have nothing negative to say about them. They're a good firm. And to my surprise, I made the statement that I think it's a waste of money to hire a legislative lobbyist. And to my surprise, he agreed with me. He agreed with me. You know, we're members of FAC, right, which kind of sort of gets us the information that we need. They do some lobbying on our behalf, on the county's in general behalf. But we also got John Booker that if we have an individualized message that he can deliver for us. So I certainly think that there's an opportunity to be more effective there with our spending dollars and maybe retask those dollars. Maybe even possibly, and I'm just throwing ideas out there, folks, maybe even having 2 teams that are doing appropriations lobbying for us. 2 different silos, 2 different teams doing that. One tasked with certain types of appropriations objectives, and another one tasked with the others. And then we hold them accountable and have them go out and seek those dollars additionally to what we do. But in conjunction with that, I think as a governing body, we should do better too and commit to doing better and working our delegation. We have a very strong delegation in the Capitol, and we're going to have that for one more session. We'll have strong players still also, but we're probably at our prime for Volusia. Do I think we capitalized on that this year? Absolutely not. I think we failed to capitalize on the potential of what we have access to. And I think going into this next session, we should certainly talk about that with our management team and figure out where we should target to bring some additional appropriations and strategies around that. So I think we have a huge opportunity there. And I'll finish with this. I know I have 7 seconds left. But I think as part of that strategy, I think the chairman spoke about attracting certain types of jobs or infrastructure investment. I think we, as a county, we ought to look at ways where we can help support that from the beginning and get that message out. So I think there's opportunities.
Mr. Chairman, your thoughts about this goal?
Thank you. Yeah, I support this one as well. I agree that it's very similar to one, but I think my major areas of concern when I read this, and it was interesting because you don't know which council members said each thing. There's a lot of agreement on this council of apparently of what's been said to you. One of the things that I'm really wondering about, I was going to say concerned, but I don't know if I should be concerned yet. I think I should, and that's the amount of redundancy. Like I would like to know from staff, we talked about cultural funding last meeting, and we probably all are getting emails, I know I am, that you're cutting culture, and some of them are pretty pointed, downright mean. I'm not against culture. What I want to know is how much redundancy is in something like that. How are we funding cultural things and art through ECHO, through the Art and Publics program, through every nonprofit we support with, they don't pay taxes, and they, nonprofits get other benefits from us, and I can't just overlook that. So I want to know how much redundancy is there in government for some of these things, important things like affordable housing payments, rent payments, food payments, because I see state funds, federal funds, county funds, and I want to make sure it's coordinated, that we're not re-spending taxpayer dollars, because there's a lot of needs everywhere, and they all need to be addressed. So redundancy is something that I'm really concerned about. Efficiency and effectiveness, this may be a stretch, but it says develop strategies to maintain adequate staffing, including parity pay. I think that's important. One of the things we can do to be efficient is to keep good people here instead of retraining people all the time. And I guess right now I'm thinking about the lifeguards. I know the county staff and county manager and safety people are definitely thinking about that with the changes that the legislature just brought us with beach safety. I want to keep those good people and be able to attract new. So, and I had a conversation with the county manager this afternoon about that, and he's already developing ways to help with retention. And then lastly, I'll just mention, I think I don't know how this fits in exactly, but reviewing stormwater and flood management approaches, I think that needs to be its own workshop, or at least to hear from Public Works and maybe Ted Caspier about how, what did we learn about flooding in these storms, and what are our plans?
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman. Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, sir. It does relate a lot to the first, but some other notes that I made when I'm sitting here talking, it was interesting that the chairman brought up the fact that we were all kind of curious as to who said what. Some of this I know I said right off the bat, and it all relates.
I'll tell you, but
I'm sorry. A lot of it relates to staffing, and the lack of staff will reflect in the county's overall efficiency, and the public sees that. And if you are so many positions down, it's not just about the most important part of that is it affects the safety of the people working in that environment. It also affects the public safety, and that is a huge priority of mine, is public safety. Reducing redundancies as well, because if you're repeating stuff over and over again, you start to miss the obvious. Cross-training to be more efficient in some areas. We were one of the best directors we had was a firm believer, when I'm relating back to when I was in my corrections world, cross-training to become more efficient, not just for our work processes, but how it relates to the public, working with other cities to reduce redundancies. We said it in the first part, that comparison with, streamlining process, yes, it relates to one, streamlining that process and the permitting part. And so you're saying I have to get a city one, I have to get a county one, I have to go, we're never probably going to get any help from the state, but at least the cities that we work closely with, they're all in favor. Every city that I've talked to about that would be ideal for them if we could streamline that. So that would be great. I mean, not other counties do that, so we could definitely landmark that. I think it's a great idea. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair.
Yes to everything I've heard. Efficiency and effectiveness, obviously we're hearing that a lot, and making this simple. And I think the major thing here is looking at what can we do, or what approvals can we give staff the leeway to make when we talk about redundancy, when we talk about recreating the wheel here or duplicating our resources. We could look at things to make them by right, or special exceptions can be approved at staff level or PLRDC like they've been done in the past. But getting back to that, because that will speed up time in reality, and getting these folks their permits and moving things along. But every 2 weeks is a long time, and time is money for everybody. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Yeah, to wrap up, you're right, goal 2 is similar to goal 1. It just gets down into the public safety and economic development. Listen, one of the things that frustrates me as far as efficiency, and if we need to plug it somewhere, I'll plug it in economic development, is I'm dead set on every time we think we need to include the public on something that we form a committee. Committees and we talked about this, committees have to work inside the sunshine. They meet at best once a month. We meet twice a month, and we just talked about the inefficiency of that if somebody needs to come back to us. So I find it very inefficient when we get a bunch of smart, intelligent, collaborative people from multiple sectors, and we put them together in a committee, and we blow up their innovation, we blow up their will, because they can't talk to each other. They can't even have a cup of coffee and talk about this great idea till next month, the second Thursday at 3 o'clock. Oh, by the way, I have a real job, so I can't meet that day, so I'm not going to see you for 2 months. So I think that's part of the streamlining that needs to be done. The other problems we have is we have multiple people that aren't sure where their, as Mr. Santiago says, where their silo is. What do the chambers do to manage economic development? Well, the chamber president knows, the executive director knows, but do the people in the chamber know why we're not recruiting from elsewhere? We have Team Volusia Economic Development. They know what they're doing. They know what the chamber's doing. Maybe the chamber knows what they're doing, but does the public know what chambers do versus economic development corporations? And then we have two valuable resources, I think, out there. Actually, there's a lot more than that, but two that I'm most familiar with. The Volusia Builders Industry Association and the Volusia County Association of Responsible Developers. Two great assets that, as long as we keep them out of government bureaucracy, could make us more efficient and effective. And they're always there for us. They're a phone call away. I've used them before. I know George has used them before, all groups. But I think we just need to maintain efficiency and make it inform people on what their roles are, what their roles aren't. And that's adding additional people to this whole mess. So it's tough to herd those cats.
Thank you, sir.
He has 3 seconds left. Can I take it? Too late. I just feel it's compelled to, because it's topic oriented, and if we're going to go to number 3, I don't want to skip on something.
Go ahead.
I want to
We're good,
piggyback.
fell on time, so I'll give each of a chance for one more comment.
I want to piggyback on what Jake was saying regarding the committees that we have and the challenges that they have. 2 things about that. One, I wonder if there's a way that legal could look into a way that their structure can be changed and doesn't require them to be bound by those sunshine
There are
requirements.
many laws to change the wording and make it outside sunshine.
Exactly. That's what I'm suggesting. Possibly they can do that. And secondly, I think as one of the things I noticed when I first came here, I think we have too many committees, and I think we've addressed some of those here. But I would like to, as efficiency, consider eliminating some of these committees that we certainly can do the job of.
So let's give each of another minute if you'd like to say anything on any of the comments. Vice Chair?
I was just going to say, if they're not state mandated, we can hear back from them at if they want to email in their concerns of their club or their group, great.
Brian Harding, additional comments?
I'll agree with that. However, I'm a firm believer now, we can't know it all. There's no way. And for example, let me give you an example. We were talking about eliminating the funding for 3 specific groups, and I'll leave it at that. And Mr. Johansson did a great thing by saying, you know what, in all fairness to these people, of the 7 that we have, 4 of them we approved because they were here and they had a complete packet. We have questions about these other 3, and let's give them the opportunity to be here. And 6 of the 7 of us were here for that next meeting, and I know I can speak for myself. I wasn't in favor of funding them until they spoke and gave us a little more history and a little more insight into what they actually do. So if we're going to do that, I think in all fairness, to stay consistent, is we give those people the opportunity to tell us what they're doing. We can't just, I agree, being more efficient, if we can do without those committees, absolutely. But give them the opportunity. We can agree or disagree to them, but at least give them the opportunity.
Look at
In all fairness, if we're going to be consistent with one thing with regards to that group, we need to be consistent with our with those committees as well.
All right, the idea so far, can you give some alternative sunshine so they can work more closely together? Do you need as many as you have? That, Mr. Chairman, comment you'd like to make on that?
Just real quick, Danny had said something about, I think it's going to come up again in Goal 5 about giving staff the opportunity to make more decisions without bringing them back to the council, special exceptions, whatever. That is coming up in Goal 5. And when I read those in Goal 5, I thought, I don't like that at all. But I hear you, and I understand what you're saying about each one of those decisions does represent a couple weeks for our constituents, and sometimes months. And sometimes it just goes on for years. So I'm willing to, I think we should discuss that. I'm willing to consider it, but I want to be really careful that we don't give away our responsibility and dump it on staff so that they get all the hate email instead of us.
Councilman Kent, any comment? Councilman Dempsey, any comment? Okay. Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir. Of course, a lot of this is overlap, and which will actually make us more productive as we're tackling them together. Couple things I jotted down as you were talking. I think we need to look at, as part of that, maybe contractor permitting education. It's one thing I've seen through the years, both from contractors and engineers, having had the time on the DRC, you see the same kind of requests that keeps coming in, and they know the answer, but they keep coming with it anyway because their client, I'm sure is part of it. But especially when you get to the, and I mentioned it to some of council, there's a great range of people that come in to get a permit, from the mom and pop to the super large home builder developer. And I think there's opportunities there, which we'll take a look at. The ombudsman was a great idea and something that we've talked about. We've had it for in economic development, but I don't know why we couldn't also do it for maybe some of the different size groups. The VBIA and VCARD part of that, I've actually had some of the private sector offer to maybe provide a low-cost service or something to help with the mom and pop, because they make their money, again, off the bigger developers, and maybe they could give back a little bit on that. So I think we can look at that as well. And I think maybe education for contractors, and especially when they're new to the county, on what we expect. And then again, when you talk about our actual operations, that's similar to what I mentioned before. We definitely can dive in on that. I will say we've done it in some areas. There are other areas that probably need that look. They probably will also entail public safety is some of those areas, because we spend a lot of money there, and that's where you may have redundancy, things to look at. We work very closely with the cities. I think we do a very good job, but I think there is opportunity to make sure there's no overlap, and what else we can do in those particular areas. And again, we'll go over the cross training. Has definitely always been one of my things that I love to see people do. So we'll continue with that. So,
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Yep.
Let's turn to goal 3, which is about recreation and sports tourism. Vice Chair, I'd like to start with you if I could this time. We'll go this way. Councilman Johansson, don't let me forget you.
I'll make it simple. I'm kind of easy to please in this area,
Okay.
Especially with young kids. And there's a lot of families out there with young kids, and I bring it up all the time in staff meetings. But I'd like to see more family activities other than, for instance, a walking path or a trail, splash pads, jungle gyms, active stuff. The passive stuff, since just my time, and I know that we do have a pretty diverse system, but or operation, but I just know on my time it's a lot of trails. You're buying a lot of property. I wish it would be more open to hunting or water access or ATVs, whatever, but something more than disc golf and trails. And I can still support them as well. I'd just like to see a little bit more.
So really more
stuff.
more active recreation, particularly family oriented. Okay. Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you. And I'll keep mine brief. This is, I love that idea, more family-oriented outdoor programs. Spent more time, unlike the kids today, I spent more time outside than I did inside, that's for sure. And I'd like to see us get back to that. We saw a little bit of it after COVID hit, more people wanted to get outside, and that was good. And then all of a sudden, boom, they're right back inside again. My grandkids, prime example. But to have more of that in mind, but keeping that in mind, I'm a big advocate of the safety that involves that. We're in a different world than I was as a kid. And so while we're implementing those programs, once we get down in the weeds for that, to look at the safety aspect of it, when I talked about it before about cameras and things of that nature, just always keeping that in mind. I don't want to lose sight of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, this was an interesting one for me. I think Volusia is known as a wonderful place for outdoor activities. I mean, we have the world's most famous beach. We have Forest Springs, a world famous river. It's only one of two that runs north. Lots of things we could do there. Just looking at the list, it was actually kind of encouraging because some of these things are already in process. Some of them should be, and we're still hoping to get them to be, like increased entertainment options at the convention center. We brought that up. Mr. Riddle he's already working on that before his untimely passing, but that's going to happen, and I think that's a great thing. One of them that surprised me, but I really liked it. It's one that I had brought up last time about a motocross area in DeLeon Springs. Apparently, the other council members talked to you about that, about a motocross water sports complex with training. I think that's a tremendous idea. I would even like to see it, and I don't know how we go about this, George, but to make that a private facility, use private land and private owners doing that we could help them through that. But whoever brought that up, that's taking it to a really good level and step, because I don't want it in the wildlife corridor. I don't want it in conservation lands that have been set aside necessarily. So this is a great way to do it. Dog-friendly beach, we're still working on that. That needs to happen, in my opinion. So, Mr. Kent brought that up. I want to help him get that across the finish line. I think it's such a little thing, a half-mile beach for our current residents and beach access for our current residents. And lastly on here, I'm not sure where it came from. Maybe it came from me. I hope it came from multiple people, expanding the wildlife corridor. We heard Mrs. Schreiber talk about that at the beginning, and I would just remind everybody that's not anything we force people to do. It's a willing seller program, and they don't even have to sell their land. They sell their development rights sometimes, and they continue to ranch it, farm it, do whatever, but that land is then safe to protect our water supply, and some of that for conservation land that our residents can enjoy. So all of these things, I think I hope we stick with all of these and keep pushing it. Lastly, I'll just mention fairgrounds and related activities. We spent some money last year in the fairgrounds. I want to see an amphitheater. A really nice amphitheater. We have local experts that will help us with that don't want to be on our payroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilman Santiago.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, everything that you said was a great idea with mine. Just wanted to let you know.
That was yours?
I'm kidding. Had to bring a little humor. Sorry, thanks. I think everything that's been said is good. I got no issues with it. I mean, I know I wasn't here for the last county council meeting, but I'd certainly like to see where we're at for the dog-friendly beach, because I think the path is cleared for us to go on that. I know I talked to Susan a few weeks ago on it, but if the opportunity arises to get another update on that, unless one was given at the last county council meeting. But everything I've heard is good ideas.
Councilman Five, y'all are discussing objections. I'm not asking you to approve or accept them today. That'll come later. So, Mr. Kent.
Yes, thank you.
Vote.
So
I want to vote.
I've always judged local elected officials, and I hope I've been judged as a local elected official on these things. Are they providing clean, safe drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, public safety, How safe are your neighborhoods? People want good, safe, unclogged roads and recreation.
The core function.
And I'm for giving fun back to our residents. I'm for less regulation on our beach. I'm for way more wonderful events at our Civic Center, at our Ocean Center. I'm for wholesome family activities and implementing a program with our recreation department where on the east side and the west side, we implement maybe a first Friday family movie night that's free, that's on an inflatable screen where you can go with your lawn chair, and there will be businesses that will, or individuals that will sponsor the event and pop popcorn there or something, you know. I'm for 3 yearly free kid fishing tournaments in different locations in Volusia County. We have a huge county, but one on our ocean, on the beach, one in one of our beautiful lakes, and one in our intracoastal. And getting a kid with their mom or dad or grandma or granddad and having that opportunity, it's a huge change for someone who's never caught a fish before to be able to do that, and to be able for this county to be judged, for me, I'll talk about myself, to be judged on those things: clean, safe drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, public safety, unclogged roads, and then let's get right into recreation. And I think that, you know, for me, many of the things I mentioned are inexpensive, maybe even will net out to zero with sponsorship, and it's low-hanging fruit. It can be done, it can be voted on by this council and implemented immediately, some of those things. And I think that they're positive, and it ties in with the theme of wholesome family activities that we offer in Volusia County, which I think is positive.
Great. Thank you. Councilman Dempsey.
Yes, I agree with everything that's been said. To follow up with Troy, I know up north we used to have pay lakes, you know, where they'd stock it. And if you're a kid, and especially if you're, you know, a single mom with a kid wanting to catch a fish, take them to the pay lake, and they're going to catch a fish. I mean, they're heavily stocked and stuff like that. And I noticed that we don't have anything like that around here. And I don't know if you guys ever experienced pay lakes up north, but they're pretty cool. So maybe we could take one of our lakes and do it. Or there's I was a terrible fisherman. As far as the motocross, water sports, I mean, that hits dear to me. I've been here 33 years, and I ride dirt bikes and stuff like that, as well as my family. And it's, you know, Kawasaki used to advertise "Let the Good Times Roll," and basically it was their advertisements in Honda. You know, they'd always advertise the families out trail riding and stuff like that. And 33 years ago, when I was actually born here, grew up in southwestern PA, came back 33 years ago. You could ride, you know, a Tanger Outlet, go down to Biker's Paradise. There was all these places you could ride. All Kepler, where all this stuff's going on, there was nothing there. Kepler didn't even exist. Martin Luther King didn't exist. It stopped at 44. You could ride dirt bikes all through there with your family, which I've logged a lot of miles through there on a dirt bike. Now everything's developed. There's nowhere to go. If you're a transplant from New York, you come down here with your family and you want to ride dirt bikes, I mean, I challenge you to name one place you could go that's not developed, or you're going to be in fear of the police coming after you. And so, and that's true. So basically, we really do have a demand there. I don't know if it's prevalent to most people, but I can tell you there's a large segment of our community that really wants this, because I can just vouch for them. A water sports complex would be awesome. I know the baseball fields, the Little League fields, my son, he used to, 5 years ago, they would have to have practice in stormwater retention ditches because there's not enough ball fields over here on the west side. I don't know how the east side is, but I know over here, you all heard me whine over the last few months, but, you know, advocate, there you go. But basically, there is a demand for more baseball facilities over here on the west side. as well as practice fields. I talked to the coach for the DeLand Bulldogs, and they had nowhere to practice, you know, and this is a really good program. They push these kids to maintain certain grade levels. They just instill with them common core values, and yet they have nowhere to go practice. So I think we owe it to these types of programs to provide them really good facilities so these kids are not just hanging out, but rather they're involved in a quality sports program. The fairground expansion, I think, would be great. There's property for sale to the west. There's property, I believe, that's accessible to purchase to the south. I mean, we could really add a couple hundred acres to the fairgrounds, and they get that amphitheater. So it'd be nice to explore purchasing adjoining property.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Johansson.
Yeah, I'm going to try to stay out of the objectives.
Okay.
But I think it's important to note, and it's good to be last to hear everybody else's comments, that a bunch of the things that I think we want already happen, but aren't as publicized as they should be because they're not done by the government, not done by the county. Does the county need to do everything for everybody? I don't think so. Do we need to have horse lessons? No, I can probably find 50 places to get horse lessons between my house and here. So I think as part of this, developing and implementing a plan is to get back to one of my C's, is to cooperate and collaborate with all the nonprofits that are doing, like Councilman Kent was talking about fishing. There's fishing on the St. John's. I know somebody hosts one because I've done one once. I know they do it down at Halifax. I don't know about the ocean. That would be the one that I've never done before, but there's other people doing it. Maybe we can help them or encourage them to go countywide. But as part of this implementation and planning, to see what we have, see what people are doing, see what we're doing, see what cities are doing. And I know, I would expect the county has their finger on the pulse of what sports were deficient in fields for. I'll tell you, at the city of Port Orange, we definitely know. And try to earmark those and get them developed, knowing that today's CrossFit or Zumba or whatever the heck it is, it might die on the vine in a year. So we don't want to spend too much money on things that are just a fad. But I think it's important. As far as the objectives, the only thing in the objective I'm going to get to is, as Mr. Dempsey pointed out, the West is what's being developed. I see in certain instances where the county and the cities are leading development. I would like to lead development with recreation if we could, because even if the economic development lags the recreation, people are going to drive to the recreation. He said there was a strong need for motocross. I know you're a motocross guy. Well, the reason my boys aren't motocross, because we don't have anywhere to go. I would have got them into it a lot earlier if we had a place to go. So I think we need to concentrate on the West.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Manager.
Well, the good news here, you guys have been expressive about this, so many things are already in motion, and we'll continue that. We are actively pursuing concerts and events at the Ocean Center. We definitely, we have out on the street right now, we are out with a study to look at all of our sports fields and the available assets for that. The fairgrounds, I believe we just got some money. I don't know if it's been, the governor signed off on it yet, but I think there's money in the state budget. There's ARPA money that we've set aside, and there's work that we've already done for the fairgrounds, so we'll continue that work. I've already had meetings with at least one of the cities on what they're up to. So again, maybe we don't do redundancy, but we work together with them, and some of that could include motorsports type activities as well. And, and yes, there's definitely some low-hanging fruit, some of these activities that were mentioned. And I know we have to make sure we do a good job of getting it out, the word out to all the things that we do, because we do a lot, but we have to make sure what we're doing, I think, matches the need of the community and what's out there, because things have changed. I think that was a very good dog-friendly beach. That will be actually on the first meeting in June, so that is upon us. So we'll keep that effort going, and I will come back as far as to update you on, you've touched on several different areas in this, so we'll update you on what's going on at the Ocean Center and the other outdoor venues.
One quick round, any other comment to the manager before we go to the next one? Anyone? Okay. Go to goal number 4, which is about fiscal stewardship. Councilman McKenna, we'll start with you, but all of you talk to me about this. You all want to be good stewards of public money, use it well, use it effectively. You also want to look at different ways, whether you're using your user fees properly, are there entrepreneurial activities you can get into that generate funds? So it's a broad look you're looking for here. Councilman Kent, your thoughts, please?
Yes, and this is hugely important, being good stewards of the public's money. And I can tell you, it's been refreshing for me to serve with this new council on this topic specifically, because we are getting down sometimes into the weeds about a couple $1,000s that we're trying to save here and there with an over $1 billion budget, and that is not for show. That is because I believe that there are 7 members who are seriously concerned about being good fiscal stewards with the public's money. All of the objectives that I read here when this was presented to us today, when we received this, I am happy to discuss each and every one of those. I mentioned that
The opportunity.
Yep, I mentioned at the other meeting, about the gas tax. So if we have an opportunity, we'll get onto that later. But from what I've seen, this is, in my opinion, going in the right direction.
Thank you. Councilman Santiago? No comments. All right. Mr. Chairman? Any comments on this goal?
This one's really important to me. The recreation sports things that we just talked about are essential for a county that wants to attract good business, good employees, keep our kids here. But first we need to make sure that they can afford to live here. And I know that at least since Danny and I have been on the council, we've worked towards that goal. Staff has worked towards that goal. I think if I remember last year's budgets, the county is the only one. I don't think there was a single city that went to full rollback, but the county did. And it wasn't easy because we have this constant tension between the fact that you need to pay people more and you don't want to increase the tax burden on our residents. They've had the same miserable year that we have had, with insurance rates going out of sky high, building materials, cost of living. So I don't want to hand them an increased tax bill this year. The only way I know how to do that, because of this tension you have between costs and incoming money, is to reduce the size of government. The way that we've talked about it here, I'm not talking about how many people can we fire. I know that's what these great people that I get to work with think sometimes. Broward he wants to eliminate our jobs. No, I want to eliminate redundancy. That's what I think what Santiago brought up about asking department heads to bring back a list of ordinance and processes. I think that's gold right there. We have to find things that we can eliminate. Government, I'm not just talking about Volusia County, government in general we're cradle to grave in people's lives. And we need to stick with a set of priorities, public safety. What is this council's priorities that we need to spend money on? And cut everywhere we can that's not cutting an essential service so that people can afford to live here, and that will help attract new business to a beautiful county that's affordable, that really cares about our businesses, that tries to get them to stay here. So everything on here is good. I'm not going to go through them all, except for the gas tax. I will say that whatever we need to do to work with the legislature to make them include electric vehicles, because they're not paying their way. You didn't drive an electric vehicle here, did you? Okay, good. You did? All the way from Deltona? Okay. It's not fair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Councilman
sir.
Reinhardt.
Yes, sir. This kind of goes back to the first one as well, as far as efficiency, because the chair just said it becoming more efficient. Goes back to what I said about when you're talking about being good stewards of money, if we can become more efficient within each individual department, we do some more of the cross-training, not reduction of jobs, but become more efficient in the current job. And also reducing bureaucracy to achieve goals. I'm not going to get into the weeds of this, but I was apprised of something today with a goal that I wanted to achieve, and I'm going to achieve it, and because it's important, it's money saving, it's mentioned in here, with the inmate workers, and I'm being told that that may not happen as a result of something else. We're not going to get into that, but eliminating that bureaucracy, because that is extremely frustrating. If it's frustrating to me, it's frustrating to the public, because we are telling them that we're going to be good stewards of the money, and yet we keep walking into walls to achieve that. So if we can eliminate that, that's important as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
Thank you. We have a lot of things facing us. Sunrail, this FRS that we're dealing with, this high-risk class. Insurances are going up $3 million. There's also costs associated with Amendment 10 that are now surfacing. Bigger budgets across the way because of runaway spending and inflation that's coming from our federal government. So anywhere in something that I believe is important is, like all my colleagues, every little bit. We don't necessarily have to cut services in some cases, but all these things where we do have control in terms of the gas tax, or can we increase our aviation fuel and apply our local option to that, which may or may not happen, but we can increase some of our aviation fuel fees. But anything that we specifically have control over that's not state or federally regulated, that hasn't been adjusted to take or to make up any space where the general fund may be subsidizing an area of the budget, I'm for, and I think we can get there. We just have to really identify them. But I think we have the right people in place to do it. So, thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Johansson?
Sure. It's been mentioned once or twice that we have some core responsibilities, and I think safety was mentioned, infrastructure was mentioned, things that nobody else can do solely, right? The county and the cities have to do those things. We have to preserve the public safety. We have to ensure the infrastructure is there. Quality of life is probably the third for me, but that is a squishy value. And that is where I think we need to be good stewards. We talk about, and we've already battled with some of these. Do we fund it? Do we not fund it? Should we not? And so far, this council's kind of thought is, well, if somebody else can do it and you're just not doing it because we're rolling out the dough, then maybe they ought to start doing it, and let's kind of wean them off the the dollar, the government dollar, and put it back in their pockets. And I go back to the recreation thing. Some of us like motocross, some of us like fishing, some of us like hunting, some of us like car racing, some of us like pickleball, some of us like cricket. I don't want to pay for somebody's cricket, and the cricket guy doesn't want to pay for my car racing. Somebody might not want to pay for motocross. Somebody might not want to pay for free concerts on the beach. That is where we give the dollar back to the citizen. And if he wants to dole out $20 to go to the concert, go. If you don't want to go, then you don't pay, because those tax dollars have been back in your pocket. I think that's the fiscal stewardship that we need to look at. And from a council or from a county staff standpoint, including council, is we need to look at every dollar spent and whether it needs to be spent. And we need to inform the public of why we're spending the dollar. If we're buying water, we better tell them why we're buying water. If we're gonna buy everybody hydro flasks and tell them to use a drinking fountain instead, tell them we're doing that and do that. If it saves money, I don't know if it does, but let's think of innovative ways to save every stinking dollar. Start with the big ticket items, but dollars matter. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Oops, sorry, excuse me. Councilman Dempsey?
Yeah, I would agree with that, what Mr. Johansson said. I think we got to evaluate, obviously public safety is important, infrastructure is important. Those are government functions. That's what governments do. This other stuff about, giving stuff away to certain charities and not others, or giving free movies on the beach versus charging access to do something else. I really believe that we really need to have a goal of not raising taxes this year. And we, like Mr. Robbins said, we're going to have FRS, Sunrail, all the Amendment 10, ripple effect to our budget. There's a lot of new costs that are going to be hitting us that weren't here the last several years. And so I think we got to prepare for that. And I think our common denominator is do everything we can to not raise taxes. We got to, just like I think Ronald Reagan said, the government's got to learn to say no. You just got to say no. When people come with their hands out for government donations for certain non-essential government functions, we just going to have to get the gumption to say no, and just remember that, I think our collective goal here is not to raise taxes. I think we're all kind of fiscal conservatives and we're trying to cut the fat. So I just hope that throughout all this process that we can remember our end goal is definitely to not raise taxes, maybe even have a rollback again if we can. Sorry, George. But if that's possible. And so I believe when possible, instead of providing something for free, if it's something that could be funded by user fees, pay the $20 to go wherever you want to go to the concert on the beach or whatever, make them pay that as opposed to making the taxpayers up in Pearson, who are never going to go to that, fund it.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, you'd like to comment? And I'll come back for another quick round of discussion here.
Sure. Well, we're getting ready to go into the budget process, so, we've spent every meeting since January. I think going over our services, we'll have one more of those at the next meeting. That gives you an idea of where we're at. And we can look at what those services are, of course, combined with some of these other goals, obviously, to be more efficient is to save money. So we will be looking at that, and hopefully these measures can bring us some relief cost-wise. But as you mentioned, we got some big fiscal cliffs coming our way, and how we handle those will be really the supreme challenge going into this season. So, but I think we hear everybody, and I know you've got a staff that is already pretty fiscally responsible, and so we'll take a crack at it and do everything we can to keep expenses down. So we'll continue that.
Let's turn to goal 5 if we could. I'd like to talk about this one a little bit. This is a little softer goal, solution-oriented culture. A couple of you talked to me about it. Let me explain why it's here. I've had the honor and pleasure to work with lots of county commissions over the years. Y'all are presenting to this staff today probably the most challenging set of tasks any elected body, any council has presented. Because you're asking them to really rethink some very fundamental ways government do business. You're asking them to rethink this approach to regulation. You ask them to rethink how they're doing their processes and all that. You ask them to think about how we can meet all these challenges with a very limited financial base. You really are presenting a tremendous intellectual challenge and an emotional challenge. Because if you worked in a certain way for a number of years, you got used to doing it that way. You understand why you're doing it. You're comfortable with it. But you're asking for a change. For a whole different way of thinking about this thing. And that goes to culture. That's what that culture is about. It's about attitudes and values and how you think about your work. So it's an important thing. And I won't necessarily ask you to do the round robin on this one, but I'd just like to talk with you about that a minute. I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay. No problem. But also, y'all have all recognized, acknowledged to me, you have a really good staff. These people work hard. They're trying to do right. They're trying to do good things, So the question for me is, how can y'all push this desire for a lot of change here, at the same time sending the message to staff that they're important, they're valued, you want their input? George has talked about how he'll get everybody involved in doing these things, but I think the message from you is also very important. So I'd like if we could just have a conversation about that for a moment. And Councilman Santiago, if I could start with you about that.
Thank you. When it comes to culture, I think just a 30,000-foot level, I would just like to work towards working with our leadership team to get the perception, right? We can't change all government, but we can try to change what we do here. But get the perception changed of it's a pleasure to do business with Volusia County. And I'm not saying it's bad, right? Okay. But I think if you ask people in general conversation, it probably wouldn't be like, I just hate to deal with the government, right? In any instance. And how do we change that mindset, right? Whether it's someone that's coming into, I'll just say the shed. Somebody mentioned the shed, right? A shed permit. Well, and I'm not saying this is happening, but instead, I have seen in other government entities, it's a no, this application is denied. Well, okay, how do we get from denied to a yes, right? We're here to serve you. Mr. Santiago, the way you have this won't work. However, we can help you do this and this and this and that to get you to accomplish what you want. We can help you through that process. That kind of mindset, I think, I would like to see, and you could apply that in every particular instance that there's public interaction, right? Whether it's a building permit to renting a pavilion in one of our parks,
So a real attitude of get to yes.
Yes.
Figure out how to help you solve this within the system. And that fits to some of your other comments about, the regulations, rules where people can't use their own judgment. They know it's not the best way to do it, but.
Let me add a caveat to that, because I know someone said that also. And I'm very careful with, giving too much latitude.
Okay.
Because sometimes that could be abused or misplaced or misdirected. And I'm a fan of rules and treat everyone by the rules, all right? Now, we have seen instances where something just absolutely doesn't make sense. And not to diminish roles, but that's when our leadership team, I think, is when we leverage, right? The Public Works Director, right? I'll just use him because he's sitting out there, right? Even George, we trust these people as our leaders. And, if George came to me and says, we have this process, but this part doesn't make sense for this constituent because X, Y, and Z, and I made the call to do that. If it even got to me, well, that makes sense. We've charged you to be a leader. And I'm sure he charges his team to be leaders. So now I wouldn't bring that all the way down to the level because you have to have accountability, right? So, but very much rules-based, treat everyone the same, but When it makes
Get to
sense,
yes.
let our leaders.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, your thoughts about organizational culture?
Yeah, I'm going to mostly listen to this one. This is the one that I'm the most uneasy with for the reasons that you just stated and that Danny touched on earlier. Here's my issue, and I'll just say that, and then we'll see how it goes here. We are elected to solve problems for the community. And we direct staff, and then staff goes out and gets it done. And they're good at that. There's no doubt about that. What I don't want to see happen is that we hand off our responsibility for important things like environmental standards, how densities, all kinds of things. I don't want us to give away our responsibility, not because I don't trust staff. They are capable, and really what they're going to do is look at the law and make an interpretation of what the law allows them to do. Is this permissible or not? And that is essential. We do need to apply law consistently to people, and I hear you say that all the time, Mr. Santiago, but I just want to I think that this process has potential pitfalls of it becomes easy for us to say, I don't want that responsibility on my shoulders, so I'm gonna make you do it. I just want to be really careful with that. So I'm going to shut up and listen.
What you don't want is a culture that avoids you guys taking responsibility.
Yes.
So, okay. All right.
Thank you. Well said. And this of particular interest when I was looking at this, goes to see the determined areas where decision authority can be delegated to that thing of empowerment that we talked about. Empowerment of staff. We want their input, but you just said it. You have to be careful about how much. If they have the idea, bring it to us. Let us know. Let us be the guys that make that decision. By the way, Mr. Santiago, great mantra for this entire process. How do we get to yes? So, for that, when we're talking about this section, but we do have to be careful. I agree with that, but
All right.
I'll be cautious on this one.
Fine balancing act.
Yes, sir.
Vice Chair?
I think we have to understand with our goals here is understanding this is not going to happen in a day. It's not going to happen in a week or a month. What we're asking, essentially, we're recreating how we do business in Volusia County. This is a big deal. This may take a year. This may take a whole another council when we're not here to get to this end goal, because we've had, however many years we've been in existence, different administrations that have put their own twist on it. And we see that at every level of government. When new administration comes in, guess what? You start getting rid of some of this crap. So, at the end of the day, Mr. Kent does something good that I've noticed every meeting is giving updates within his district where he's at, and some other folks do it as well. But if throughout this process, depending on what we adopt, if we can give updates on, hey, where we're at, it lets people know that we're doing certain things or we're headed towards the right direction in some of these goals. But hitting on just two other small things I think is big. I hear my colleagues saying it. I know I had mentioned a couple times, quality control. How many times do we get a call from somebody that says, hey, just letting you know, this message is recorded for quality control purposes, da-da-da-da-da. That gives ourselves an ability to go back and say, hey, where can we improve? Or if there was a complaint, go back and say, hey, and you can really start drilling down on actual issues. Chair, I think you're right where we have to be careful not to give away too much of our responsibility, if you want to call it that. When it comes to land use changes, when it comes to complaint, that's our thing. Where I see us getting down in the weeds are everyday stuff where we ask the public, do A, B, C, D, and E, F, and G, pay the permit thing. Then you got to go through this process. Then you have to come back to the council. Then you have to go through this thing. Then Tom, Dick, or Harry from across the county can appeal it. So before you know it, you have a year It goes by, nothing's been completed. They've spent all this money and resources, surveys, all this nonsense, only to get denied. But meanwhile, they've met all the expectations in a special exception that we've asked them to do. And if it fails, do they get refunded? No. But meanwhile, so that stuff really is, I pay close attention to that, and I don't agree with going through all these hoops just to be smacked down by the heavy hand of government. But just to clarify where I was going, staff handling the process and requirements of those special exceptions or everything that's listed within our zoning when it comes to those exceptions. But where we can handle the appeals and denials, for instance, or if PLRDC doesn't recommend it, or if staff doesn't recommend it, then it comes to us. So,
Thank you, Councilman.
thanks.
Councilman Johansson?
I'll try to stay away from these objectives again.
Okay.
Fostering and support of a solution-oriented culture. I think what we don't do, and I support, is leadership training, because that's what I do. But one of the things we fail to sometimes instill in our staff and our people is the ability to deal with power. And all of a sudden you got a job where you can say no to somebody. Unfortunately, you might be earning less than $15 an hour, but you're able to say no to a multimillionaire. Wouldn't that feel good? Give them the stick and make them walk out the door. So I think the culture. I'm a Greenleaf guy. Greenleaf is a servant leader, and I'm going to read his best test because I got 2 minutes. Do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, and more likely themselves to become servants? And I think it's important that we understand that we're trying to serve people. They're not coming to us for something we have. We're trying to give them what they deserve. So I think it's important that we up here and staff and the public understand that we're here for them, and we need to help solve their problems. What we aren't here to do is make problems. We're not here to cause problems. We're not here to put up barriers to getting stuff done that needs to get done. Sticking back with the things that are inherently governmental, right? Safety, infrastructure, things of that nature. If we concentrate on that, and you know, in all the objectives that we talked about, the state's got building codes. We have things that keep us safe. We have land development codes. We have future land use. We have all that. That we should be able to provide staff this culture from up here that will filter down. It filters down to George and Suzanne, and then on to the department heads, and next thing you know, everybody's semi-happy, maybe, including our constituents. So I think that's important. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Dempsey?
Yes, I agree with everybody here again, thankfully. You know, I'm a big believer in a laissez-faire type of government. You know, we just need to keep our hands off the people. I know Austin Peterson, who was the Libertarian candidate for both previous presidential election and the Missouri State Senate, the Missouri Senate. His campaign logo was, "I want to get elected to stay out of your life." And I love that, because that's my concern, is there's just too much government. Instead of, like, the one objective here, expand staff authority to determine special exceptions. My thought is, why don't we just get rid of these special exceptions? Why don't we review the code and look at things that are listed as special exceptions, and instead of making people go through the whole process of getting the blessing of government to do something on their own property, Why don't we just make that a permitted use? Why don't we go through the list of special exceptions and just say, hey, let's switch it over here to permitted use? That cuts down on a lot of red tape. And because I've reviewed it, and I've seen several things that are special uses that I'm thinking, why isn't this just a permitted use? If you want to live in a community that has a lot of rules and regulations, go live in a subdivision where there's a homeowners association and let you all collectively within your homeowner community decide what is allowed or isn't allowed. But when you're living out in the country, and you go out in the country because you feel like this is my property and I should be able to do with what I want on my property, and I agree with Troy, I think you said it, but basically, you should be able to do with your property anything you want to the extent you affect your neighbors. I mean, you can't go burning tires every Saturday and smoking out your neighbors like that, but you should have a lot more personal freedom to do what you want with your property than maybe what a lot of these special exceptions prohibit. You know, I just think we need to be more focused on oversight and getting rid of all that red tape. My office down the street was built in 1892, and I could assure you there was no department of this or division of this or permit for this or anything. It was just built, and it's been there through all the hurricanes and everything else, and it's lived over 120 years now, and it's made it without any government intervention. So really, believe it or not, people don't really need government in their life, you know. And so I just think that it would be nice to get rid of stuff. I know my stepdad and I have built several houses back in the 1980s in Pennsylvania. I remember him telling me we had one inspection on our house that we built. It was a service entrance to the house. We built mine about 20 years ago out here, and I think he said 25 or 26 inspections, you know, where the concrete on the driveway meets the road. I mean, little stuff like that that delays the whole building process. Do we really need all that stuff? Or can we go back to how it was, you know, in happier times? Thanks.
Thank you.
And it held out during the dog parades.
Yeah. And in your goal one, which you've adopted, you're going to do exactly that analysis. Councilman Kent.
So this one, fostering and supporting a solution-oriented culture, and I heard, you know, something earlier, I think, you know, how do we get to yes? And that was interesting for me to hear that. And then it made me start thinking about, you know, changing a culture and goals. And, you know, this council every 2 years has several members up for election. And that's just how, you know, this works. So, you know, for me, I think it's hugely important that we're having this workshop today and discussing goals, because whatever goals we agree upon, I think most of them should be able to be accomplished within 2 years. We can make goals for 4, 6, 8 years, but you're tying the hands of future elected officials and future councils, and I don't like doing that. I don't like coming in and having my hands tied about something. So, you know, changing that culture, the voters, our bosses, our constituents, you know, they put 5 new people in these seats 4 months ago, 5 out of 7. So there's a change. There's going to be a change in culture because of that, because the voters made their decision about that. The other way you change culture is with your management. And you know, I can tell you, I've been very pleased with the department heads that I've had an opportunity to meet and work with, because I do believe that they're professionals and they want to do the right thing. But this notion of no and pushback, and that's not how we've done it. You and I had a private conversation, and you know, one of the things I mentioned was when you do what you've always done, that's just how it is, how we've always done it. And there's pushback from some people because changing things is that dirty 4-letter word I talked to you about, work. There's work involved because we didn't do it that way. We've done it this way. We want to keep doing it that way. Yeah, but this way is not what I'm hearing and others are hearing from their constituents, and we need to make some changes because otherwise we wouldn't be needed and staff could just make all the decisions. So I'm excited about goals every 2 years, the culture change, and also customer service. And I think that's another thing that is very important with our constituents is that, you know, how they are treated, even if the answer is no, because it's going to be sometimes. It's not always going to be a yes. You know, I have a constituent who purchased property into land, and they've got to put a sprinkler system in their house. Well, the answer is you've got to put a sprinkler system in your house. I mean, that just is what it is. But there's a way to say it with customer service that might feel a little bit better than just a hard no.
Thank you, Councilman. I'll ask the manager to talk about, you know, one of the responsibilities of a manager is really shape the culture of the organization. And George will talk about that. But I also want to acknowledge you on the dais, how y'all act up here has a tremendous impact on the organization's culture, you know. And particularly if y'all develop a strong culture of how you work together, even when members change, the new ones tend to adopt that unless there's been a big revolution because they're not happy with folks. But so the culture thing is something y'all have a tremendous power to make. George, your comments on that?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I think anyone who's worked for me or worked with me, I've said the phrase, we need to get to a yes many, many times. That is the culture that we are instilling here. I will say, kind of building on what Mr. Kent said, you know, really in the last couple of years, if you look at what's gone on, we have been in a big change. We've gone from a different form of government to a new form of government, really, through Amendment 10. So we've dealt with that change. We've dealt with changes in how we do business because of a pandemic that changed the way we had to handle things, and we'll continue that. And so we've just changed something here recently because of other legislation, a way we're doing business out on the beach. We have a transition team that is in process, and I expect is being worked out, and that's the kind of culture that we have here, and we'll continue to do that. The customer service part is definitely important too, and I think we can always use some update and training on that, and how we do treat people, how we do guide them to that yes. So I'm all for that, and we are always ready, and will continue to be doing that process. If we don't, what I often tell stories and opening this very discussion with department heads and division heads and others, you know, we talk about, well, there are organizations that didn't change. I came from an area, I think some other people on the dais are familiar with the Rochester, New York area. Kodak did not change what they did, 56,000 employees. When I was in school, I don't know if they have more than probably 500 or less left in the world. So if you don't change, you're not growing, then you're going backwards. So we'll embrace certainly that element, that goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we look to our last goal, I'd like you to turn back to the front page and just the 5 goals there. You know, I've reviewed these with George and Suzanne. They're committed to making these happen, you know. So I want you to give me the feedback. If y'all make substantive progress on each of these goals and accomplish a number of things, get stuff set going on other things, are you going to feel like you've had a good term, you know, that this has been productive for you? Okay. All right. Okay, all right. Thank you for the nonverbal feedback. All got it in 15 seconds. We're really good here.
How Mr. Santiago asked the question, how are we going to know? How are we going to measure it?
Okay. Well, I'll say something first. I'm going to ask George to reply. The next step for me is, now that y'all validate these goals, is for George to go in and figure out how he's going to approach those. And that becomes a set of objectives, and probably see some of them many again here. But an objective for me is something that's tangible enough you can measure, either quantitatively or qualitatively, in the sense that we got it done, or, you know, we had a goal of 75%, we got to 68%, or whatever it is. So every objective for me has a measure, and that's how you define a good objective. And objective to me is you can put a budget to it. You can put a work plan to it. We need to do step A, step B, step C. Put a timeline to it. We need to do step A by January and step B by February. And you can put metrics, and those can be both progress metrics and impact metrics. So how I approach it, that's how I go about it. You know, you want to try and get it concrete enough that you guys can see progress. And, you know, my clients use very different things. Some of them have scorecards they put up where you can see the objective and how far you are. You're 30% or 50% or 100%. Some just give reports that, you know, however y'all choose to do it is fine. But you need to be able to see, here's our path, you know, here's where we are on the path. So now the measures for each of them will be different because every objective is different. So I can't speak to that, but every objective is measurable in some way so that the manager can report to you on, here's how we do it. And I think it's up to y'all how you want to choose to hear those objectives, whether you want quarterly reports or individual meetings or however you want to do it. That's your choice. So, George, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, everything Herb said. I mean, we like to put things in place that we can measure. Certainly, I know we're very familiar with that in a lot of these areas where we're doing efficiency work. It'll be important to have work plans and then measurement of how they achieved it. It's something that we do have experience, and we'll set that up for these areas. We can also take a look at maybe, you know, the number of regulations and things that we looked at and what those changes would be. I think that would be another metric, but we will put together those type of things. Of course, the fiscal items will be evident as we're going through budget and, you know, what we can achieve and what we can achieve with the money that we have. That'll be a big part of how we do go forward. So we do have great minds that we have here, and I will need all of them. As he said, these are not, some of these goals are a little, they go in a little bit opposite direction. So I'll have to figure out how we achieve adding some things in an era of trying to reduce expenditures. So, but we'll see what we can do. And I think if we have those priorities, we'll come back, and there may be decisions that'll have to be made at a little bit different level of, you know, can we do this or that? It'll be a lot of balance. How do we keep and retain people, and pay people what they need to do what they need? But however, again, people are probably our largest expense. So as we're doing that and trying to keep a budget under control, that'll be the work we do.
Thank you. I'd like to turn to the last goal for a minute. So if you'll turn to the end page here. A couple of you talked to me about being proactive, and setting goals is a proactive step. One of the first things, you know, you don't have goals, you're reactive. You have goals, you're trying to move toward them. Obviously, priorities can shift because the world can shift at times, but you still have set that. So several of y'all talked to me at one of the things and was time management on the dais and how y'all manage your time. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit. First, I'd like to congratulate you. We got through the 5 goals in 1 hour and 43 minutes. So you're doing great time management this afternoon. Y'all have really moved well and productively.
That's normally one agenda item, so we are doing good.
Okay, fair enough. Well, but, you know, still. But if you look at item number 1 here, y'all encourage briefer staff presentation. I understand staff are doing that. They're working on that. They hear that message. And clearly, one of the ways that works is for y'all to review the materials ahead of time when I get them to you, so that you know what they're talking about. And I always encourage you to, if you got questions, get to the manager or the appropriate person before. It'll save you time. It'll save everybody here time. And sometimes you need to bring out questions because you want the public to understand. It's not that you need to understand, but you want the public to understand why you're doing something. So, but let folks know I'm asking this question not because I don't understand it, because I want the public to understand it, you know. Again, is, you know, just abiding by the time limits. And let's talk about, my understanding is y'all have a rule, you got 10 minutes, and then you have another 10 minutes. And I think what y'all have said to me, we're willing to be called on that. We're willing for the chair to say, you know, your time's about up here. Please wrap it up. And so I would suggest the chair, if it gives you a minute warning, or y'all set up the 10-minute clocks on your screen, you know.
Okay.
But I think
Herb,
you can do that.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
You know it was going to come from me. Today we had the timer on the screen. I'd like your thoughts on whether it helped you all. It seemed to, very much so.
Could I respond to that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just,
3-minute clock now, guys.
I think, I know to stay within 10 minutes, but sometimes my phone's over here, sometimes it was right there. I watched it go red, I watched it go yellow, I knew I had to wrap up.
Okay.
I welcome that, and I don't know if you all do.
No,
but
I
if it
do.
didn't
I mean,
bother
it helped. I mean, you just said it. I'd like to congratulate you for an hour and 43 minutes, and I, without hitting the mic, made the comment, well, we're on a 3-minute timer, too. And it wasn't so much the 3 minutes, it was the fact that we were adhering to a timer. So giving the 10 minutes, and then, you know, the whole rule thing that the unwritten rule of the 2 bites of the apple and whatnot, adhering to that, you know, it's not about being embarrassed because you get called on it. It's about being efficient. And I can tell you, since we started to unofficially made that a rule, or officially, however, people have commented on that. They've made comments to the fact that, well, that's nice to see that you guys are doing that because you're becoming more efficient. This whole process today, we talk about efficiency. That's a prime example of it right there, holding ourselves accountable.
I'd like to add to that, if I may, from the perspective of meeting procedure. And I think we talked about it in the second meeting. And for us to be more structured around times for questions and time for debate, I think it keeps it cleaner. You know,
And my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilman, you have staff presentation, and the interaction at that point is solely to be questions of you to the staff person. It's not a discussion or debate among y'all. It's just a question, so you get whatever your answer.
and during question times, you don't debate.
Right, you don't debate during questions. Then y'all let have public comment. Then you go to your discussion,
Correct.
where is a debate between y'all.
That's correct.
And if y'all choose to abide by that, it's a very efficient way to do it.
Yeah, and that's what I'd like for us to get towards, right? Going to the public comment, and then that's when we talk about how we feel, after we've given the people the opportunity to speak.
I think our problem, me too, I asked 2 questions. I go, the reason I'm asking that is because my concern is, and then you go on the diatribe. So if we limit our questions to
and
our questions, then we can.
And Mr. Chair, you're guiding on me. I'm okay with if I go into debate and it's time during questions, I'm okay with just saying, you know, Santiago, we're in questions only. I have no problem with that whatsoever, right? Yeah, and then go off to the next one. And we're all held accountable to that. We'll get much better at it, right? And then we go into debate. And guess what? When you're in debates, there's no questions. You're done with questions. You've missed the boat.
All right, so we'd like the chair to say, if y'all start to say, this is questions, guys, not debate yet.
Can I add to that?
Oh, sure.
It's just, I think this started off that we had the time up here. You had already shared with me that they had asked that it's okay if you call them on time. To this point, I think Jake has been timing people, but I actually bought a strip clock that I could put up here. I don't want to bring that, not because they've said go ahead and do it. It would be much better to have the time on here for each of us. Is that not possible?
They did.
Yeah, I mean, we just did it, so.
And then too, for like,
Okay.
when we speak.
And so I've still got 9 minutes left. And then we will,
Somebody's favoring the chair over there now. All right.
then we will do that. The other thing is, and I know this is, I always keep an eye on Troy Kent when the public is speaking, because I know if they go 2 seconds over, he's getting ready to press the button to tell me to turn them off. And he also knows that my tendency is to be permissive with our employers that come to speak. They get nervous. and you can usually tell when they're winding down. Sometimes they ain't winding down. And so I'm trying to get them to understand that before they speak, that at 3 minutes, that's what you have. And it's not because you're not important, it's because we have a lot of people that want to speak. We've had nighttime meetings so the public can get involved. After 9 o'clock, there ain't nobody here anymore. By 1 o'clock, they sure aren't here anymore, so.
John's here.
Well, and let me say one thing, why adhering to the 3-minute rule for public comment is important. Because if you give somebody 4 minutes, everybody says, well, I should have had 4 minutes, you know. It's just a fairness thing. And I understand people are nervous, you know, and it's hard to get everything out. I think one of the things that probably could be helpful to them, Mr. Chairman, is, you know, if they're not watching the clock, at 30 seconds, you say, you got 30 seconds left, you have a particular way you want us to vote or something message, that helps them get in their head, okay, I got that much time, I can say it to you. I've seen that technique used, and it's been effective. Mr. Vice Chair.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You're good.
I think we should consider, and I think I mentioned this to George, they had tried this a few years ago, giving the public an opportunity to waive their opportunity to speak and just make their position in support or against an objective. Yeah, we do it in the State House. I just wait. It could be in the form. The chair reads it. David Santiago waives in opposition. Boom, done. And then they've made their statement from a perspective, and they don't have to be that intimidated position to be in front. Because it is intimidating. But if they want to come, they can. Okay. But giving them the opportunity to waive or in support or in opposition, we see them right there. David waves in opposition. So I don't know how you all feel on that, but I think it will help maybe more people fill out a card.
First time seeing that at this, that's why I referred to that when I went up to Tallahassee recently, and we did a couple hearings, and I asked and I questioned why they do that, and he said, well, think about it, that a panel that's up there hearing, the public will come up and say they don't necessarily want to talk, but they're showing the senator or the House representative they're in support or in objection to their point. Plus, it shows that panel, wow, this guy now, 10 people showed up, they didn't want to talk, but they're all in favor of, they don't need to repeat everything that the congressman or the senator is saying. We're talking about becoming more efficient. You know, you don't have to repeat everything we just said.
And it'd be optional.
It is.
An option. Yeah, for those folks who would rather not have to stand up here, but just be able to wave a card or whatever.
Yeah, we could add that to here, that, do you want to speak? No. And I can say, everybody that's for this, stand up. You fill out a card, or against it, and that.
People get the hang of it. We have to promote it, though.
Yeah. So let's adopt that process.
No, I just want to say, I think in an hour and 43 minutes, we made leaps and bounds towards our goals, and that's awesome. And that clock, huge. It would help out because Jake's sitting right next to me. I don't want to keep getting hit. And I think to add to that, I think we also proved by all having that 3 minutes that we can probably scale down our 10 minutes. If we can't get it out in 5 minutes twice, we got a problem. But also too, to wrap up where I'm getting at, we have a 2-time speaking limit. Sometimes it gets chaotic. I've counted 5, 6, 7 bites at the apple sometimes per. If there's a way where if we have our names by the roll call, where we can get that 1 or 2 slashes, Don. Just kidding.
Not speaking to anybody in particular here.
No, we love Don. But
Troy's not looking up.
On purpose.
I noticed that.
He's waiting for his 10 minutes.
well, I'm guilty. I'm guilty as well.
Okay.
But no. If we can have like a slash mark, you know, for 2 times, that way we know, and it makes. I chair a couple committees, but it's a burden, but it's a lot. And you have 7 people up here.
Sure. A lot to do. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, so we had some real practical ideas. Put the timers on the monitors. Give the public who would like to show where they're standing a way to do that without having to come to the mic.
George, can I get one of those Steel Thunder lifeguard whistles?
Okay.
Your thing.
Okay. Using your presentation time for questions, limited that to questions, letting public comment, having your discussion after that. I mean, that gives it work. and looking at that. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about time? I'd like to talk some other items here. Yes, sir.
Your mic.
Turn your mic on.
If we go into debate, sometimes I need to ask maybe Clay or somebody a follow-up question while we're debating, because you may be making a good point on something, and I may want to ask him
For clarification.
directly. So are we saying that we're gonna, when we hit debate, staff is just off limits, and we can't ask them to come up and give us some supplemental information that we might want?
If I may respond to that, what I would do in that scenario is you're talking, I'll go over there and talk to him. I'll go and ask him a question. I've done that already a few times during the process. But, I mean, I'm open to either, but I'm going to tell you what I would do, and I've done it a few times.
I see what you're saying. You go over there and talk to them, but we may learn something as well. We may have the same question, and the public also, that they don't know what you're saying to the attorney or whatever. It may benefit all of us.
For me, the practice
Just
I've seen
make-
a lot of commissions do is, you know, if y'all in debate and somebody has a discussion, you call the staff member back if he asks that question. That's separate from their presentation, you know, because sometimes you do need it, and then they just get out of the way, you know. So it's not to interrupt your flow, but it's just, I need a piece of information,
Timers.
here's my question, and
But your timer's timing.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Good
that's
point,
the way
good
to
point.
handle
There
it.
you go. Hey,
I think that's the way to handle it. You can ask a question, but it's still on your 10
That's
minutes.
9 minutes worth of questions.
I'm just glad I'm on the other end of Jaker. He's probably already bruised up by now.
That's a good alternative.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
However y'all choose to do that, but we certainly will want you to be informed, you know, before you have to make.
One more thing, I do like the fact that when it talks about being able to, I think, Jake, you did it a while back when you explained to the public, we were going through one part of the consent agenda, and we said, listen, just so everyone knows, the public, explaining it to them what we're doing. You know, we went, it looked like we're not even really reading through this, but we had the opportunity a week now to go over the agenda. We get it ahead of time. We've had that individual one-on-one meeting with staff. We can ask those questions. So it looks like, you know, just explaining the process, I think that's important. We may not have questions. I've been criticized for that, actually, for not having questions, but if I'm a big advocate of not having to repeat what everybody else is saying. So, and we're all guilty of doing that, but if we can avoid that, that's a time saver as well.
Okay. Let's look at item 2 for a minute. I commented on this earlier, but again, your behavior on the dais and how I act rolls through the organization. I've had the opportunity to work some really effective commissions. I mean, they've got so much stuff done, it staggers you. I get called in when they're highly dysfunctional commissions. And what's going on in that organization when there's dysfunction, everybody just stops. They put their heads down. I'm not going to do anything more than I have to do because I don't want to get in trouble. You're not going to get innovative thinking. You're not going to get anybody proactive. They're just going to hold down. And also what happens is when you see dysfunctional commissions, the public starts to think, well, that's how you act. That's how you talk. So I'm supposed to come up here and yell at you. Because you yell at each other, you know. So the power of the dais is enormous. I mean, it really is. Not totally in terms of your power to make decisions, but the symbols and what people see. So I would just encourage you to remember that. It really is a very powerful position, not just because of what you get to vote on, but because of how you demonstrate leadership. If you want to comment on that, I'll pause and let you do it. Yes, sir.
I would love to, as somebody who's not about to go through a reelection campaign. I think it's important for the 7 of us to follow this practice, especially during the reelection campaign. I don't know. I know the chairman's opposed right now. I don't know about the other 2, but this is a powerful place to sit, and we have a distinct advantage up here because we have a microphone and we have 10 minutes twice to sprinkle in things that may or may not apply. So I encourage all of us, the ones that are up for election, to consider the task at hand and try not to try not to over-campaign while you're sitting here, because it's easy to do. I can imagine I didn't have to do it, but I wish I could have. You know, during the campaign season, one of the things most of us did, some of us did, is stood right up there on the podium and told everybody what we stood for, because it was our 3 minutes to do it. For me, I was at large. It was 16 cities. I quit after about 4 because I didn't feel it was a welcomed environment. But I think it's important that we stay professional, and when we sit down in these chairs, we're sitting council members, not future council members, hopefully.
Thank you.
I'll just add, you know, I've seen dysfunctional bodies several times, and I'm sure many of you have too. And, you know, when things go off the rail or begin to go off the rails, it's not good for anyone, right? I can say how I'm going to behave, and on this. And during the campaign season, I'll just start with that. Many have asked, well, how are you going to? Yeah, right. Let's have some good debate. That's a good one. I'll take it. But have good debate and then move on to the next subject, right? I'll never get stuck on a losing vote from my perspective. So my 2 cents. Thanks.
Well, if you could, let's just, 3 of y'all have done setting priorities. I'd just like to go through 4. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of officials. Some of them have been just so great. I've learned a lot from them. And here are some of the lessons I've learned, and many of you have sat on the dais, and I'd like you to either affirm these or share others if you would. One is nobody bats 1,000 in this league. You're going to be on a losing vote sometime, you know. And the key is, okay, just move on. You know, there'll be future issues, things come back around, you know. So, you know, just don't get hooked up on it. And the second with that is what I've seen folks sometimes, well, you know, the vice chair voted against me on that. The vice chair must hate me. What's the vice chair got against me? You know, the reality is any of your votes have to do with you and your understanding of things and your priorities. They may have nothing to do with anybody else. So simply because somebody votes different than you is nothing about you. It's about what they believe they need to do for the community. And each of you have what you think is in the best interest of the community. Most of the time, that's all going to be the same, but occasionally be different. So, you know, I just don't make assumptions about why somebody's voting the way they are. They're just voting that way for whatever set of reasons. The other one is not to personalize. You know, one thing, the Florida Sunshine Law is very different. I've worked in Texas, and we can get a majority of the council together at any time. Can't get the majority. I've worked in Ohio. You can do the same thing. Here, we can't get you together. If you want to make a group dysfunctional, don't let them talk to each other. You know, if you think you got a group of employees and you wouldn't let them talk to each other, I mean, it's, you know, what would a school system do if the teachers couldn't talk to each other and make your life easier? But, you know, so it's a hard thing we do. From my perspective, it's not the smartest thing to do, but it is Florida law. And one of the things I've seen a lot of times, folks start to personalize this and think this is a vote against me, somebody doesn't like me. And that starts to get on your mental health. I mean, for your own health, I just urge people, don't personalize this. This is a business. People are making the best decisions they can on what they think is the best interest of their community. Speak no evil about another council person in public. You know, y'all are going to have disagreements at times, but you know, that's between y'all. Doesn't need to be shared.
Can we text it instead?
Huh?
Can we text it instead?
Yeah, text it instead, sure. No, I think is often helpful. You help your colleagues express their perspective. You know, sometimes they're trying to say it, and that may even be hoisting their own petard when you do that. But you know, if you help them say it, and others give the reasons for your position. I help others understand why you're choosing this. You know, you have reasons. You're not doing it just off the top of your head. So do that. Other things, those of you, you know, have seen, been in the position or seen it, think are good advice for your colleagues here that you've learned that helps you be effective?
I wanted to add one thing, guys. We talked about it. I think we're there. This 10-minute thing keeps coming up. I just wanted to throw it out there. I'm okay with chopping that down to 5 with 2 bites. I keep hearing it, so I can make it happen in 5 and 2 5s.
So It's a rule, it's a guideline, right? Not a rule. It's nothing we have to vote on. We just,
It's in the ordinance, so if
Okay.
you did want to go in that direction, but I think you can impose something more restrictive on yourself if you
yeah,
want.
so this is a workshop, right? I get where you're going, but you know what I'm going to say. It's an ordinance. We'd have to change it, so I don't want to change it.
No, I'm just throwing the
but-
idea out there.
But why don't we set the timer for 10, try to stick to 5, and if we keep on doing 5, if it's an ordinance, let's change the ordinance. But I'm all about sticking to 5.
Did we really put that in ordinance? I don't remember
Yeah.
that.
Our second
The
reading, I
prior council did.
Okay.
Yeah, I would, I don't think I'd be in favor of taking the 10 away. I like your idea of putting 10 up
We can also,
and all of us agreeing, try and stay at 5, because there's some issues that are really complicated. And like Don said, you're calling up staff, somebody else's question created a question for staff, and I want to make sure, I don't want to restrict anybody from being able to really drill down on a.
well,
on a
we can also vote to give more time.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
no, I think you already solved it. You put 10 minutes up and all of us agree we're going to try and stick to
Right,
5.
start at 5.
I'll do that.
That'll work. Voluntary. Y'all try and see it. And you can see how it's going and that. Okay? All right. What I'd like to do as a wrap-up, I'd like to go to the deputy and the manager and ask them to make any comments on the day, and then I'd like to go to each of you. Any final comments you'd like to make? Mr. Chair, I'll wind up with you at the end. So,
Are you giving him a time limit?
no, he can talk for 10, 15 minutes.
Well, no, I'll be brief. I more or less wrap things up with the last comment. I mean, we will get together. Some of this may be done, there's a specialized team maybe for some of the goals. Others were more general, and so we'll have a wider group of people working on them. And some of the goals, I think, are, like you say, we'll come on out and measure what actually got done. Some are really, I think, putting in a more of a process or a way of thinking. So, fiscal stewardship, I think you want us to be that way all the time. So we'll work on it from that perspective. So this has been very helpful. Suzanne, you.
Suzanne, any comments you'd like to make?
Okay.
And I'll go to council. Let's start for you. Your final thoughts on the day. Any last comments you'd like to make? Within 3 minutes?
Within 3 minutes? No, I'm good. I think this was real productive. So, yeah, I'm just encouraged by everything that was said. That's all.
Great,
Thanks.
thank you. Mr. Kent?
Yeah, you can just keep his 3 minutes up because I won't go that long either. I thought that this was a healthy exercise for this elected body, and my only hope in the future is that whenever the next election happens in 2024, that staff, George, your staff, you all implement this within the first month. Like you have the organizational meeting, and then within the next 2 meetings, this happens, so that it's not directed by one of us. It's it lets us know that you guys are focused on our goals that we have for our constituents. And I just think we're just a couple months behind, so it's not a huge deal, but it was a very productive workshop on getting our feet wet with our goals and what we want to positively and impactfully change in the next 2 years, year and a half now. Thanks.
Councilman Santiago.
Thank you. I just wanted to repeat the thought about department heads to George and to Susan. Because I want some type of measurables and something to report. If you could consider implementing that concept, allowing each department look at their processes to interact with the public and throw some ideas to you and your team. How do we make it better? Because I'm certain we can come up with dozens of ideas throughout the departments, and it'd be nice for me to say, yeah, we did something there. I know you're going to do other stuff, but some type of tangible stuff, and these are the things we did. This is what our team came up with, so just wanted to repeat that. And then I didn't want to let your idea, Mr. Dempsey, go by on the special exception stuff, because I know we've dealt with a couple of special exceptions since we've been here, and it's been kind of messy, if you ask me, because special exceptions, as I know them, there's criteria already in place to meet the process for an approval, but then it still comes to us. So I'd like to consider, without the council's objection, to have staff look at that. Can we, by special exception, allow that to be a staff-oriented decision? Right? So if they've checked all the boxes, why come through more bureaucracy and wait another month or so to come before us to go through this whole hoopla? So,
And Councilman, that's part of goal one.
well, yeah, but I want to make sure that that part didn't get lost, because that's something that we deal with frequently.
Okay.
Thank you.
Reinhardt?
Thank you. Excellent process, I mean, to be able to do this. I will say that, talking about the 5 or 10 minute or whatever rule, I'll refer to this as the Brady rule. And the Brady rule, I have a son named Brady, and Brady will always ask, well, he didn't finish all that, can I have it? And I just don't want to make sure that Mr. Santiago doesn't implement the Brady rule by saying, Matt didn't use all of his time, so I'd like to take the 53 seconds that he had left, and I'm gonna say Brady rule is being used, and my son is cringing right now if he's listening to this. But thank you very much.
For the vice chair, next, Mr. Johansson, your thoughts. Then I'll go to the vice chair and chair.
Okay. Here, you can steal from me. I love the goals. I already told you that public safety and infrastructure are givens, so I never even included those, but probably ought to be somewhere on there. I like the fact that our every one of our items is assigned to a goal. That might be a little bit harder to do with these goals, but do your best. In the feedback to the staff for your objectives, I think if the county attorney can give us those committees versus task force versus ad hoc tiger teams to resolve some of these issues, Mike. I know committees once again fall under sunshine, so if we can, I don't want to get around sunshine, I just want to keep these professionals that have these great ideas as nimble. The reason we can't get people on boards is because then they can't be nimble and responsive. So let's look at options there. I think the county manager said that some of these goals are kind of divergent, and I would say that the spending money on recreational activities and fiscal stewardship could be, but fiscal stewardship isn't cutting the budget down to nothing. Fiscal stewardship is being smart with the dollar. So it's incumbent upon us to tell you, if we want a Olympic pool complex, we're not going to say, and don't spend any money. So we'll have to figure that out. But I think you're getting the gist, majority speaking, on what we don't want to give. We don't want to give away money because we gave it away last year. So as we look for those metrics, some people are asking me, what do you want from us to get that grant funding? And I list the things I want, where's your budget, how much you getting from grant, how much you're making yourself, and what percentage of what you're getting is stuff we're giving you. That's the kind of metrics we're looking for, and if they can't produce them, then they're probably going to lose their funds. So that can also happen internally, right? To a lesser extent, and I'm sure that everybody's got, because we're government, we have data coming out of our ears. So I'm very, very happy with everything we've done today. Thank you very much, Herb.
Vice Chair?
I think everybody did great. It allowed us to kind of get everything on the table, air some of our concerns in a non-sanctioned or aggressive way, I guess, is a word for it. But no, I think we made some good headway today, and it's laying the groundwork for some good things. And I'm excited to see where we're headed. And thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Do I get the balance of his time? No, yeah, this was good. Thank you for conducting it. Thank you to council for staying on task and staying on time. I was confident that that would happen. I think we see a council that's working together well more and more, even when we disagree. I think we see that respect. I do have one issue, one concern, and it kind of goes with what Mr. Santiago said, that there was a lot of good things here. I'm actually a little disappointed. I had 3 things down I wanted to have votes on today because they're so good. So when I get done, please tell us how you see this being managed from where, because that sounds like we're turning the whole thing over to staff. They're going to come back with objectives, and then are we going to debate them again? But here's the 3 things I want. Like Mr. Santiago said, I think it's 2 of them are his. Were the same for him. I want the staff to really hear the first one that David said, direct department heads to come back with a list of ordinances and processes that we might need to change. I don't know how we reduce the size of government without looking at those kinds of things and tossing out anything that we don't have to have that doesn't improve people's lives. Number 2 was Mr. Dempsey's ombudsman. It goes perfectly with one of my goals of developing a one-stop shop for permitting. I want companies that when they come to this area, they don't have to go to 3 different cities and then the county, and they can go one place and find out permitting. And here's buildings that are available. Here's where this can be done. Here's zoning for this and permitting. Here's the and it just, let's make it easy for businesses that are here to expand and business that want to come here. So I don't want to lose that. And the third one was the wildlife corridor. I wish we could vote today to expand the corridor because today those funds are available. The state just passed additional funds for that, and I don't want to miss out on it. So please, staff, hear me on those 3 things, and then I've got 41 seconds I'll give to you. Thank you,
Thank you very much
for the day.
I'll try not to. First, let me just reply to your question there. Every objective on this list, the staff have got to look at. And they may have some they want to add, and y'all have added some today, like the ombudsman, et cetera. So there are people taking notes, so the next version will have more stuff in it because y'all have said it. Staff need a little bit of time to think about how they'd go about that. Some may require workshops with you. Some may just be a presentation. Some may be just a direct agenda item, like the wildlife corridor. It just needs to be put on. So I can't speak to what needs to do for each objective, but every objective is going to have to be addressed in some way. They're not going to lose these because they're yours. But there are a lot of objectives. Staff need to sequence them, figure out, some are driven by opportunity. There's the money now, so we need to drop it. Some are driven by we need to do some legal opinions. There's lots of factors. But none of this gets lost in my mind. Probably more stuff gets added to it because George had a lot of ideas of his own, and you need to have that. So all this comes back to you. The format will vary with the objective and how y'all do business. But it all comes back, and ultimately you have to vote. You have to say yes or no. So y'all will be faced with every one of these has some decision with it. So it's a lot of work, but y'all can do it. So, clear enough response? Okay.
Thank you. I think Mr. Robbins had a question on top of that.
Sure.
So just so I understand it perfectly, so from here, we have our objectives in each section, and I guess those are all going to be compiled, and then they'll come back to us and say, okay, we want to focus on A, B, C, D, and E, and we want to scratch that. Is that how that works?
I'd rather give the manager the opportunity to respond to that rather than me. I don't want to step in how he'd like to proceed it. George, were you able to hear the question?
Repeat that because Suzanne was asking me a question right when you.
It was probably more important.
You might have been saying the same what we were talking about.
Like all of our objectives, if we can, are we going to create like a master objective list? I know some of the things are already in progress. Some of them we've already voted on and we want to go forward. Are we going to have a master list and then come back and say, hey, we want to do A, B, C, D, and E. We're not going to mess with this. How Is that the approach that you're thinking, or?
Sort of. What I would say is there are definitely things like I mentioned today that are already in progress. So we will put those down and make sure that, everyone agrees that that is the direction under that goal. There'll be others that we're going to have to do a little bit more thought. There was the thought of trying to prioritize these goals themselves. Do you want to give some more weight than others, which would might drive our timetable? My only thought on that is some of these overlap so much that, are you really like 1 and 2? There's a lot of overlap, so I'm not so sure that we would be really working on them at the same time. And I think the fiscal stewardship is an overarching, like I say, theme. So what I'd like to be able to do is have some time with the department heads and division heads to put this together. And again, we'll put together and we'll say, there are these objectives that we are already doing along these lines. There are these we'd like to add, or we suggest that we add, and make sure that the council agrees, and then we'll be off and running, and we'll be also putting in the element of, well, how do we measure it? And like I say, some will be evident by, how we come up with the budget and what we do there. Others will be as we bring back processes that you wanted to be removed during the certain permitting processes and all that. And of course, as we've done in the past, when it does apply, we can attach that goal to it on the agenda so people realize, that was goal number 3 and 5. So you'll see also how that's going, working along. We've done that type of work in the past. You've seen maybe on some of our agendas from previous councils that had some of their work attached to this as well.
Any other questions? Well, the best advice I ever got before standing on a body such as you is be brief, be blunt, and be gone. So thank you very much.
Okay, we're not done yet, though. We have public participation one more, and then I don't know if the county attorney wanted to say anything, so we'll finish with the public participation. We have one person, Suzanne Schreiber. Is she getting 3 minutes or 10?
Sorry, gentlemen, but if I drive 50 minutes from my house to come, I need to make the best use of the time, okay? 11.2 million for the Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program and 60 million for park projects. I don't know what those are for, but some of you who want different types of parks and items, you might please ask staff what that is. I had said that earlier, but I just want to point it out one more time. Even with, I listened, tried to listen really well, even with playing out, staying out of our lives, as it was said, you are elected officials, and you did come into a charter, a comp plan, a resiliency resolution, items that were already voted on by the public. So I just want to point that out, and possibly you can change some things. I don't really know. I'm not suggesting I don't want you to, but I understand the difficulty of coming in to items that already exist. I just want to say. And so with the items by the public, Echo and Forever, they did vote on those items. So I ask you to respect that in all regards. And I think you try to. I really do. So I appreciate that. Now, speaking as a resident of the county, you all have different philosophies, even though you kind of agree on a lot of things. I mean, I hear you saying you all agree, and it does appear like you do. But as a resident of the county, some of you I've never met with or spoken to, and some of you I've met with more than once, and some of you I met with once. what do I mean by different philosophies is some of you want us to approach staff to get things done. Others want citizen-led, us to fill up the chamber for what we, are asking. Some of you want us to just walk in here and ask for it. There's all levels, and so as an active resident, and we have more active residents than myself, it becomes really difficult because then how do we interact with each of you, with each one of you saying, go to them or come to me or, come talk to all of us. That becomes really difficult to navigate. I understand individuality, and maybe that's just the way it's going to be. But I can tell you that at times, if we go to staff with different initiatives, they will tell us to come find votes. And if you have a charter and you have items in place, well, I ask you to consider that. So I don't know, I'm just speaking to you as a resident. It can be very difficult, that's all. But I appreciate all your time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jake Johansson.
Mr. Chairman, quick question. In some of the cities I've worked with and around, during workshops, I don't have a side on this, but during workshops, some cities and counties don't do public participation during the workshops. Is that part of our charter? Is that standard procedure? I don't know if I care. I'm just asking.
Yeah, this meeting, the way it was structured, because not knowing if you'd be taking votes on the goals themselves, it was advertised as a special meeting and not a workshop.
That's right. Perfect. But so my question still stands. Workshops, do we do?
Workshops, you're not required to have public
Got
input.
it.
However, I've seen sometimes governing bodies still allow for it, but technically, if you're not taking a vote, you're not required.
Got it. So back to you, Chairman. Workshops, do we, I just want to know if we're going to allow public comment during workshops, or
Do I get
have
to
you
make
in
that
past?
decision?
I guess I don't care. I just want to know before it happens.
My tendency is to allow, I always enjoy hearing from the public, especially if they do what
Right.
Mr. Schreiber, and actually speak to the things that we're dealing with. If they
Yeah.
want to come in and talk about what the president's doing, I can't do anything about that.
Right.
But if they keep it focused on the business at hand, I think it's helpful. But I would leave that up to
And
the
so can we, for workshops, which I've had workshops that directly involve the public, so they kind of get to speak anyhow, but on workshops, do we want to limit it to the workshop items, but allow public comment? I don't know.
Yeah, good question. Would that be legal? That makes sense.
For a workshop.
For workshops, you can do that. You would just need to understand that you're not taking any vote or giving any direction, not taking any formal action at the workshop. If you keep it as a special meeting, you just have more flexibility in case you do want to give that direction, but that's up to you.
Yeah.
Matt Reinhardt.
Just a quick question. Thank you, Chair. Taking the public comments during the workshop with like what you just said, before we arranged this special meeting / workshop, whatever, we made a decision on doing it here. We talked about the possibility of doing it elsewhere, a boardroom or whatever. If you say a workshop and we do it in a different environment where the public is not able to, as many of the public are not able to sit in, and I think that was the reason why we chose here was, anyways, I'm just saying if we do it somewhere else, it's going to make it a little, logistically, it's going to make it a little more difficult if we say, yes, public should be able to participate, and I'm all for that, I'm good with that. I'm just saying it makes it a little more difficult for the public to be able to do that.
And just to be clear, it'd still be a public meeting. If it's a workshop, sure, the public would still
Yeah,
have a
it's
right
just
to
logistically, it makes it a little harder for them.
the participation
For the
piece.
participation. So if you say workshop, no, you can't, or yes, if you say yes, you can, then does that bind all the workshops to this location to make it to accommodate the public?
And like I said, I've seen governing bodies do it different ways.
Okay.
I've seen sometimes no public input, other times
Something to think
they
about.
allow public input. This was advertised as a special meeting, but we can make that decision maybe when you do schedule
There
a
you go.
workshop
All right.
on a case-by-case basis.
Troy Kent.
Thank you, Chairman. Just some food for thought. And I'm one that I always appreciate public comment, and I like interacting with the public, which is why I host my quarterly district dialogue for resident meetings. I do that on my time for them, but we're bound by the Sunshine Law. We don't have a lot of time to get together as an elected body. The workshops are for us to hash things out. And if a member of the public, and we had two tonight, one person that, in my opinion, I believe, talked about things that we would be talking about today. Another person got up and talked about, a petition to get rid of our governor and some stuff. So some things we're not going to talk about today. So when you open up that public comment at workshops, in my opinion, we are going against what we just spent the last hour talking about, which is being more efficient and effective in streamlining the process. If anybody from the public wants to speak to any of us before a workshop, all of our phone numbers and emails are public. I call everybody back that calls me. I talk to everybody that wants to talk to me. If somebody wants to address something with any workshop we're going to have, they're welcome to do that with me. I'm not going to speak for you gentlemen, but if I was a gambling man, and sometimes I am, I would say that you all are as well. But that's our time to get work done. And we don't get to talk outside of these public meetings. The public's welcome to be here, listen to everything we have to say, bounce ideas off of each other. But I just food for thought, I wanted to remind this council that that's our time to get work done for our constituents. Thanks.
Okay, I don't see anybody else. Mike, I think I asked the question, can we limit it to discussion just on the workshop item?
Yes, you could.
And that's perfectly legal? Okay.
Yes.
Well, we'll talk about it with each one. I guess I understand what Mr. Kent is saying. I'm still, I don't remember ever having a workshop where we had more than maybe 10, 15 minutes of public input, even the school board boundaries. But, so, I don't think we need to hash that out more tonight. We've heard everybody's feelings, and I know there's mixed feelings about it, so we'll be sensitive to that. Thank you for a good meeting. Thank you, sir, and for the public that came and staff that's here. And at 5:40, we are adjourned.